Hey, everybody. Mary Delgado with the Blockchain Herd podcast. And I'm super excited because I have a special guest on who is the guru of Link. He's been in it for a really long time, and he has agreed to come on and talk to this newbie about Chainlink. And his name is Max Seraphin. So here is Max. Hi, Max.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited.
No, really appreciate it. I'm happy that you're going to teach me some things about Link because there's a lot of newbies out there that don't know what it is. So tell me a little bit about yourself first of all, so the viewers can know who you are.
Yeah, okay. Well, my name is Max Seraphin at Scruffer on Twitter. I tweet a lot about Link and not really anything else. I entered in Link back in 2017, November actually, when someone named the Bit Advisor on Twitter was shilling me the project. And, I wasn't really in blockchain back then. I kind of had some Ethereum and I had Bitcoin back in 2010, but nothing to where I really researched and understood anything. But once he started showing me, I started researching this project. I'm like, this is genius, this is connecting smart contracts to real world data. And this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And this is me with very, very limited amount of knowledge on what blockchain is or how it could help the real world. So I put a good amount of money in back in point 15 or 15 cents per. Put some more in point 30, kind of hovered around there, and I bought more in at $2. So I've had a relatively good position for the past 3 years. Haven't really sold any. Just continue to bring on more to the position.
So Max,
Uh,
you got in that low?
yeah, yeah, it
Oh,
was. It's an exciting time to get in back then.
wow, it is. That is crazy. So
Yeah.
so why that one? Is it because you're a math guy?
So at first, I was kind of just investing for fun and didn't really have any aims to pursue, just trying to build small positions and gain more knowledge. But then with Chainlink, I wouldn't really say it's the math. I didn't understand a lot of the tokenomics at first, but it was what grasped me on the project is how it can connect and blockchain can be used in real world industries. And I think that's a problem that was never solved before. We had blockchain, and then we had the internet, and then we had our real world industries. And blockchain was kind of separate. And this is the first project I have ever seen that connected everything that allowed industries to use blockchain.
Is there any other area that you would dive into other than Link that you're interested in, or is this just you're just solely a Link guy?
I have very small positions in cryptocurrencies called DIP, which works with Link that deals with flight insurance. Kind of just working to see if it explodes at one point. I have some bullish tendencies, but it would be long term, so they're just sitting on a bag. I have some Ethereum, which I use for gas fees to transfer from wallet to wallet, and then just hoping that it continues to move upward with smart contract utilization. Other than that, I've very small positions in other currencies that I kind of trade. DMG is one; it's a governance token, but don't really need to get in any of that. In all honesty with you, my portfolio is about 99% Link, and then long term it's 100% Link. So everything else is kind of just short term bags to add to my Link position.
Where do you think Link is going to go from here?
From here, we're in a really special time frame with what Chainlink is pursuing and what we're actually looking at. So we're in this speculative phase of investments where there isn't Chainlink isn't really being used in a ton of industries. It's building its network effects. It's building project utilization. So we're slowly getting to this point where we're going to separate from fundamental value or some from sorry from speculative value and move into more of a fundamental value. And what this fundamental value does is it starts separating us away from people just putting money in because they think it'll rise, but people putting it in because they're using it for the usage. So, blockchain technology used in business models, and then we're seeing exponential growth because of staking. So people are putting money in the project as collateral, and this collateral is used to harvest or to set service agreements or allow service agreements to go through. So then you're locking up a bunch of Chainlink tokens, and you have a bunch of businesses who want Chainlink tokens. You have a bunch of people who want Chainlink tokens to invest and to stake and to build interest and appreciate their value. And we slowly get to this point where you have so much demand for this project and so little supply. And that's the beautiful point. And we see a lot of things on Twitter, or I do, that talks about how the supply usage could be a capacity because, if I'm paying $5 for a service agreement and then Chainlink's price doubles in a month, so then people are saying you would be paying $10 for the service agreement. But the beauty of the project is it can be pretty broken down into fractionals or decimal places. So you can continue to pay the same amount in the US dollar or euro or pounds for these service agreements while the amount of link decreases. So, for example, one link could be $5, and then a month later, zero point 0.5 link could be $5. So you're still paying $5 for the service agreement, but the amount of link you're transferring back and forth starts to decrease. And that's how I see the big value in this project is the network effects, is the people who are moving early with Link are going to gain the most from it. So how I view it is if let's say Microsoft is starting to use Chainlink service or Chainlink to process real world data and start using smart contracts in different models, right? So if they start early on, then their link in the beginning, they might be still paying the same amount of service agreements in the beginning, but a year later, they'd be paying so much less in link and they had to have so much link already set aside for these service agreements that it'll keep decreasing the cost of their business over time just because of the model that link is and how it can keep lowering in size and fractionals but still be worth the same amount of USD per service agreement. And I know that's kind of confusing. That's why I like to type out articles a lot because I can kind of break it down into words and show models. But that's the basic concept of why Link is so valuable in the long term.
No, your articles, I mean, your articles are great and they're so informative and I appreciate them. I've read a lot of them and, everything that you said absolutely makes sense. As link increases, I guess, then it costs me less link to do a transaction, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So I got that. Now you mentioned something earlier about staking. So
Mm.
is that live now, or when do you think that will be live?
So the thing about staking is everyone thinks that Chainlink's going to come out and say, staking's live. And what staking really is, it's not a process to where you're putting Link into just some locked up company and they're giving you interest for locking up your link. I mean, you can already do that on crypto.com or a bunch of other services to where you're just locking up your link and the company's rewarding you for it. It's just like a basic savings account or savings account don't really provide a lot of interest, but the premise is the same. Or a CD would be my good example, a certificate of deposit. You lock up your USD, and they provide you interest for locking up your USD with the bank. And that's what Crypto.com and a lot of these other people who are saying that there's staking going on. But the real staking is what will happen is Link will slowly start talking more. The Chainlink team will slowly start talking more about threshold signatures, Mixicals, and then VRF, which is viral our virtual routing and forwarding. I do not know a lot of the technicals behind this besides the very brief research that I have done and what I know in my head, so I cannot explain it in a way that's going to make any sense. But what's going to happen is the link is going to be set into collateral on contracts. So let's say that I'm a node operator and Microsoft or let's say Wells Fargo wants to do a big transaction with Bank of America and they want to use a smart contract. Well, if it's worth millions of dollars, they're going to want some link as collateral just to make sure the node operator continues to make sure the transaction goes through, make sure the data gets there, and the collateral's there just in case anything falls through that there can be a penalty taken out. So it's there's a safety, even though it's a trustless system. So the collateral let's say you put 200 link as collateral, right? Once the transaction goes through, then the node operator is rewarded higher than what they would for regular service agreements due to the high collateral they put on and due to the amount that's locked up in the contract. So the collateral is the form of the reward system in terms of staking. So, and basically you have to be a node operator to start getting interest on your link and staking it and getting and using it as collateral. What's going to happen though is for the normal user is we're going to have things that's already happening. Link Pool is doing it. It's called pooling, and you're basically putting a bunch of link in a pool. A pool is just a collection of funds, and they are the node operators, and they're putting your link or the pool of link towards as collateral. And then once that gets finished and your transaction is finished, or the pool's transaction is finished, they're going to send users who contribute to the pool a reward and a percentage of interest. So you don't need to know any technicals to do any of this. You don't need to know anything in terms of how to access or operate your node, but you can just put money towards a pool or basically a somewhat of some obscure certificate of deposit, non-traditional, and then you're getting interest on an appreciating asset. So the beauty of it is the locked link in collateral contracts where people are trying to buy more links so they can lock it up. So you have an appreciating price that continues to appreciate over time, and the link locked up is gaining interest. So people are continuing to make money off their money while their money is growing in value. It's the most interesting concept. The easiest way I can compare it to is dividends, to where companies are paying out small portions of value each quarter in terms of how many shares people have. But the difference is the demand for companies comes from people buying stocks that they think are undervalued, or companies that think will progress in the next 6 months, year, 2 year, 5 years. The beauty with Link is people are buying it because they know it's going to be used, and with more use comes more money for them, and with more money for them comes more ability to stake more links. So it's this amazing process of just continue appreciation with use.
I got to tell you, pretty impressive. I mean, you know your stuff. You really do. Very impressive. Now, let me. I was wondering if you can just maybe give me an example, like so then my listeners could understand. Like,
Hmm.
I know that my husband mentioned something about a gambling site that may need to use Link. So, can you explain how something like that would work?
So with a gambling site, the best way I could describe it is it would be using Link as a form of a trustless system. There might be other ways that are uh, passing over my head, but the way that I'm viewing it right now is with any other transaction. So if you go on a gambling website and you want to deposit your funds on the gambling website, you're giving a centralized third party your money. It's like giving a bank your money. You're putting your funds in the bank and you're trusting the centralized authority, right? Well, the same for the gambling websites. So let's say I want to put $100 on the Lakers, so I deposit $100 into some sort of gambling website, or $100 in crypto, whatever it is. So now this site is holding my money, and I'm trusting the site to hold this money and to pay me out if the Lakers win or whatever the bet is, right? So,
Are you a Lakers fan?
yeah, I grew up in LA.
I live in Florida, so anyway.
Yeah. Lakers rule, but other than that, so if the Lakers win, the site's going to pay you out the amount you bet. Let's just make it easy and say you win $100, right? So now you have $200 on the site, the 100 you put in, and then the 100 that you won off the Lakers. So with that, so then the $200 gets sent back to you. Relatively simple process. The only problem is it's not trustless. So with smart contracts and with Chainlink is it can use an aggregate data feed. So you're pulling from like ESPN, Fox, NBC, anyone who's covering the game, anyone who has knowledge in the game, it's pulling from a bunch of different data points and making it one. So there can't be any obscurities. There can't be anything that could cause the smart contract to execute prematurely. Like, let's say ESPN accidentally puts out the wrong score, and then the gambling website's using ESPN. And well, then what? You get to this
So
point where you're
I basically don't need to trust the site, right? I don't have to rely
um,
on any of that.
correct. With
Simply
Chainlink,
payment.
it just makes everything trustless because it puts it through a
Wow.
smart contract.
Wow. I mean that seems pretty easy to me. If I don't have to think about somebody doing the right thing and paying me my money once, I win. So that makes a lot of sense
Correct.
for sure. I mean, again, very, very impressive how you know. all of this information. I encourage the listeners to absolutely, look at a lot of your stories that you write. So why don't you tell us where you can find your stories?
So I have two, or I have a Medium page, at Max Seraphin, I believe it's just that simple. And I've only have three articles on there right now. Two talks about the tokenomics. One is more talking about how staking can influence the price in a long-term way, and the other article is just talking about how the Chainlink token is needed. I tend to write articles about what people are talking about on Twitter who have questions or who are just putting random fear and doubt into the Twitter scene, which doesn't need to happen. So I like to clarify on things that people are questioning. And once again, Medium page is just at Max Seraphin.
So speaking of Twitter questions, we put a tweet out there that I was going to be interviewing, and then we had like just a flood of people asking, "Hey, I want to ask these different questions on there." So why don't you just have at it and answer some of those questions that were out there, so then the viewers and me can learn.
Gotcha. Well, I can do that. So I have a few that kind of expressed interest, and I wrote down a few notes for them. So one that I had in mind was, can you express the market cap value and the future value? So we're looking at a $5 billion market cap, and what people think in the crypto scene is 5 billion for an alternate currency, which is or alternate coin, which is what Link is considered still, is a little bit overvalued. But what they don't see is the big picture. Is 5 billion now may not be a big sentiment for crypto in the next 5 years. And that's kind of what we need to look at. The best investments are ones that you're comfortable holding for 5 to 10 years. So 5 billion might be considered highly valued for a speculative investment. As we move forward towards 5 and 10 year marks, we're going to get to this point where we have huge consistent gains, which I talked about earlier with staking, and all of that kind of comes together to form a fundamental value, which we did talk about in the beginning. So I won't repeat myself, but you're going to see big companies using Link. Big companies using Link will skyrocket the price over time, and it'll cause a lot more people to use Link, so then they can build their interest and value on top of it. So all in all, we want to look at the future value more than the current market cap because short-term price analysis doesn't seem to matter or does not matter at all if we're looking at a long-term investment. The other one that I found interesting was the top three industries. So it's important to see what Link can help with, and it's important to understand that Link isn't industry specific. So we have Apple or Starbucks, who are very industry specific. They focus on either technology, or Starbucks is more of retail and food, right? Link can be used in every single industry. So the value of it can't be just compared and contrasted to technology companies or food companies or anything of that, but rather an exponential value of everything.
So is
So
there an industry that you can think of that it wouldn't be applicable?
anything that doesn't deal with data. So if anyone can think of an industry that doesn't use data, then that is an industry that cannot use Chainlink. But we use contracts and everything. So smart contracts are just an electronic obligation, right?
Mhm.
But me and you had a contract per se to get on the show, where you said that you wanted me on the show. I agreed, so I showed up and you showed up. So we both met our ends of the contractual obligation. Well, I would argue that every single industry here, or every single industry uses contractual obligations, and every single person uses contractual obligations. So unless there's an industry that doesn't use technology, then you can't use blockchain. You're on paper still, but I would say that's one in a few.
Well, you're talking about contracts. So I own a real estate company. So it's very interesting to me how there's even title companies that are, choosing to go that route as well. So I'm sure that in the real estate world that we're all going to move to this type of this format. So
Right. Well, speaking on real estate contracts and specifically, I mean, real estate's a huge, huge. I mean, global commercial real estate's $3.2 trillion in valuation, right? So, but specifically, let's say someone wants to buy land and they want it to have a clean title. Chainlink can have an aggregate data feed, so and ensures that proper market research is done, and it pulls from a bunch of different data feeds to ensure that the land has a clean
clear.
title and ensures the money's there from the purchaser. So you put that all into one smart contract and it executes executes, when everything is validated, and then it's all taken care of. So you don't need that intermediary making sure the transaction is taken care of. It cuts costs tremendously.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's going to save the buyer and the seller a lot of money because you definitely pay a lot in a lot of fees as it relates to title work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it ensures that all the parties do the right thing as we were talking about earlier. So go on to the next question.
So more on the top three industries. So, we have global life insurance, 4.4 trillion, global oil and gas, 3.3 trillion, all of these top three industries. Real estate I mentioned earlier, but what I like to hone on is the derivative industry, which
Mhm.
we have a big risk called counterparty risk.
Right.
So with derivatives are basically dealing with futures, swaps, forex, anything with investment wise, it's all in this big derivatives market, right?
Right.
So what people are risking is counterparty risk is basically that one person or one of the people involved in this transaction is going to default on the contractual obligation. Default is basically meaning that they're unable to make the required payments on the debt obligations, right? So with smart contracts, it completely gets rid of any form of counterparty risk because you have your funds on both ends of the smart contracts. So people can't have funds at 1 minute and then not have funds later and not be able to and default on their contract obligation. So smart contracts, once again, it connects two people, two parties, or multiple parties, and makes sure those funds or both ends of the party is met, and then it executes based on data. So it removes
So,
counterparty risk,
Matt,
which
if
is
I can just
huge.
stop you for 1 second, can you
Yeah.
kind of explain derivatives in kind of simple terms for my viewers?
Um, it's basically everything in an investment market. So you have forex, which is foreign all the currencies, currency trading. You have futures, which is the future valuation of the Dow Jones, S&P 500, which are just big, New York Stock Exchange, which are just big markets, exchanges, and then a bunch of other things that are a little bit intricate, but it's basically just all the investment markets into one.
Okay, got it. That makes a lot of sense. All right. So continue on.
So with the derivatives, so it empowers an automatic execution and creates the aggregate data feeds bundled to a single data point, and then feeds it into the smart contract for execution. And then it gives whatever the preferred payment output is through that smart contract. So that's huge with derivative markets. That saves, if it's $300 trillion industry, that saves trillions of dollars.
Hmm.
And
Trillions? Did you say trillions?
yes, the
Wow.
derivatives valuation. People say it's in the quadrivative. I don't even know the word past trillions, but people say it's past trillions. Google says it's around 300 trillion, could be 12 trillion, but I've heard say things that say 600 trillion moves through it a year. It's a lot of money with worldwide derivatives, and to solve a problem like that is huge. And for people to say that they wouldn't want to use the they wouldn't want to use blockchain technology for this is saying that companies don't want to save an exponential amount of money.
So your next question.
Yeah, I have one more I'm going to do, and that's asking about if 50% or more of Link is locked up, why hasn't the value caught up? And this is a great question, but
So let
um,
me stop you there. You're saying 50% or more is locked up?
right. So let's say it's sitting in different people's wallets or sitting in collateralized contracts or sitting anywhere, in the future or now. I don't know how much is really locked up, but the questions assume that there's 50% locked up. And I'm going to guess that they're staying in wallets. So it's sitting in wallets, so there's a lower supply.
Okay.
Um, Now, the speculative value of Link has caught up over time, but we need a much heavier onset of usage and volume over time to really see the price move.
Mhm.
So we're not going to see it all at once. And that's how kind of supply works. So we have the Bitcoin happening where people will think that during the event, Bitcoin's just going to skyrocket because the price per reward for mining decreases or halves, goes in half. So consumers and producers in a market don't notice supply right away usually. It takes a good amount of time for the supply to start being noticed or subtly notice in a market. So even if there's 50% link locked up, I would argue the speculative value started to catch up, and that's where we reached that $20 price. And it may have happened later on down the line, but that's because the market hasn't recognized the decrease in supply, and it just happened over time, and then it happened to kind of just shoot up at that point. Maybe even hit a valuation that's a little bit high for speculative value. And people aren't going to like that I said that, but speculative value just doesn't matter. So I could say anything. I could say it should be worth $500 speculatively. It just doesn't matter. It could be worth $1 speculatively. All that matters is the long-term usage and long-term value.
Okay, and then I have to show you something really quick because I'm just noticing something. Bear with me a moment.
Good. Alabama pride.
I just saw your sign back there that said Tar Heels. You're a big fan. That's so awesome. So, how much longer do you have in school?
I have until December 2021, and then I'll graduate with my business degree from Keenan Flagler Business School at UNC, and then hope to go into some sort of finance role. I haven't decided yet.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, my viewers, everybody really needs to follow you because you really know your stuff. I mean, you were rattling some things that I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna do some research on. You know your link, that's for sure. And it's pretty exciting that you got in like so early on. So when you go out into the business world, you're going to make an impact out there. And I want my viewers to make sure that they read up on some of the articles that you read. So tell us again where we need to go to find you, and your Twitter feed, all your social media, everything else.
Great. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Scruffur, SCRUFFUR. And then my other one is just going to be my Medium, which is at Max Serafin, SARAFIN. And you can connect with me on either one of those. Twitter is going to be best. I tend to look at that a lot more frequently.
Well, I definitely am going to have those links, to all your social media, and then I'm also going to have some links to your articles as well. And as always, people can send me some feedback or some comments or anything else like that. Was there anything else that you wanted to add on before we end?
Nope, that is all. I appreciate your time, appreciate your viewers' time, and it was great rambling about Link for a good amount of time. I,
No,
I tend to talk. I can just keep talking, I'll tell you that.
I absolutely love it. I would be lying to you if there were some things where I was like a little lost in there with all the numbers, but I'm just learning here, and all of this stuff really intrigues me. And you're the perfect person to start talking all things Chainlink. So I really, really, really appreciate you. And if I harass you and call you up and ask you some more questions in between your studying, please respond. But
I will, thank you.
yeah, but thank you so much, and sorry for all the technical stuff that happened as well. Because you're my first interview. You know that,
Oh,
right?
that's exciting. Yeah, I feel
Yeah, you're
special
my
now.
you're my first one. So I'm gonna send you a little special something in the mail. So when we get done here, I'm gonna get your information and send you a little swag of stuff. But again, thank you so much, Max. I really appreciate it. And to all my viewers, make sure that you follow him as well. So thanks again, Mary with the Blockchain Herd, and you heard it here on the Blockchain Herd.